So the chess merchant is finally dead. Can we all rejoice? Is she better now? Is she actually a character worth playing? I don't really think so. The 7.3.0 PTB has dropped and we got some really nice changes, but the biggest one of all obviously being the Skull Merchant rework. But before we get into that, let's quickly go over the other changes since it's so short. First off, Furtive Chase got a buff. Now it gives a whopping 5 meter reduction per stack instead of 4, so going from 16 meters to 20. Oh my god! Is what I wish I could say if this perk wasn't so fundamentally flawed. In no universe do I want my terror radius to be smaller while I'm in a chase. When you're in chase, the survivor will already know due to the chase music and the HUD indicators, so what's the point of making it smaller then? I suppose the way to make it actually activate and work is you start a chase with someone and then try and quickly run somewhere else, like to someone working on a generator while you're still considered to be in chase. But for something like that to work that's that specific, why not just run Monitor and Abuse? It gives an 8 meter terror radius reduction while not in chase, which is what you want, while also giving you more field of view, which is really nice. I get that making a perk that could effectively delete your terror radius would be way too insane, but like really, in chase is useless. Background Player got a buff to give you 1 more second of speed boost, but like, does it really need that? Considering the time window you have to blind the killer while they pick up a survivor, which is the intended use of this perk, you'd miss the window by that 5-second mark. Maybe they buffed it so that you can run in, blind, and run out with that extra second of speed, I don't know. It honestly would have just been better if they made it a quick exhaustion perk like Smash Hit where you have a reduced amount of exhaustion. I really think that's a better way to go with these sort of perks. Trickster and Huntress got a quicker reload speed buff, very nice, and Deathslinger also got this, while he also got some buffs to his add-ons that make you walk faster. Overall, really nice to all three, but I do wish more was done to the Trickster, mainly his main event being the only one of the sort of stim abilities that you cannot actively control when to use. And then Legion got a buff to this add-on, but like, Finally, the Trapper got an insane buff to move faster after placing down his power just like the Knight, and getting more maximum traps. Will this move him out of bottom 3? I really doubt it, maybe bottom 5, but still, it's the Trapper. Much like the Skull Merchant, he's just flawed at a structural level, so they need an overhaul to fix him. And speaking of overhauls, now we get into the Skull Merchant. The Chess Merchant has finally been killed, no longer will we sit through 1-hour games. But for her new rework, I'd say it's like this: Jack of all trades, master of none. And what do I mean by this? Well, while playing her, I noticed her new kit is like some sort of amalgamation of every zoning killer in Dead by Daylight. Instead of her placing down drones that scan an area and apply exposed if they're in it too long, now she places down drones that will spin around and give them stacks as long as they are moving in the radius. At max stacks, the claw trap is on them and they become broken. Further scans will go into deep wound and make them hindered. This is where I mean Jack of all trades. Honestly, I did enjoy playing her a bit, but nothing compared to other killers. It never really felt like I was smart outplaying survivors because now her kit is just, after a while, survivors will just straight up lose. Skull Merchant maintains her ability to gain haste as survivors are marked, and paired with the hindered, it makes her really strong. Her traps do stay in an area after you set them, so she becomes this pseudo trapping killer whose drones stay in an area after activated, which I really love, as you don't have to set them up and constantly have to reset them like Hag and Trapper. It's just set and forget. Now on to the bad stuff. Since they reworked her drones entirely, they now do not go through objects and require direct line of sight to activate and only scan by slowly rotating. Let's start with the latter because god, this part infuriates me. So when the drones are placed, they start off in the secret standby mode where survivors cannot see the radius of the drones, and the only way they activate is if they run into 2 invisible beams that neither of you can see. So the only way your power will activate and turn on is if someone runs through something neither of you can see. I've had times where survivors run through my drone and don't activate it because it turns so slowly. Like genuinely, the rotation speed in stealth mode needs to be increased because it turns so slowly that it can be an actual hindrance if survivors get lucky since they can run faster than it turns. I really wish that it worked that it would automatically turn on if they just stand in the area long enough instead of waiting for it to slowly rotate and turn on. Then when the drone is finally activated is where her power starts. In their scanning mode, they slowly gain stacks every time they are hit with the rotating beam, which again requires direct line of sight. Once they're at maximum stacks, they get the claw trap and it does last quite a while, so she does have some built-in anti-healing. And if they get scanned again, they will become inflicted with deep wound. This part is strange, as instead of getting exposed, they traded that out for deep wound, which I don't think is anywhere as good of a trade. The big part of the additional scan is that it will apply hindered and killer instinct on the survivor, paired with the free speed boost that you get can lead to a 13% speed difference. So she has the slowdown of Clown, injury spread of Plague or Legion, tracking of Doctor, speed buff of Clown, and the zoning of Hag or Trapper. But like I said, again, Jack of all trades, master of nothing. I made it sound insane when she could place down a trap that stays basically forever and can deep wound survivors and slow them while constantly revealing them to you and giving you a speed boost, Surely when you hear all this, you'd think S tier killer. Well, to put it simply, her drones suck really bad. The rotation speed and needing line of sight just handicap her power so hard. Along with that, when you run into a drone, they fly up and turn off for a second, so in loops, you do not want to place them directly in the loop, but somewhere off to the side where you won't directly run into it. I really wish it would just stay up and keep scanning instead of just deactivating your power when you go by it. It's like if Hag's traps turned off if the Hag walked over them. They also did another 1 step forward, 2 steps back. While they fixed Chess Merchant, they also made her revert to her PTB form. For some reason, recalling your drones will also make them go on cooldown, like in the PTB, instead of being able to mass recall them on the live servers. Then, you don't even get to see the amount of stacks the survivors have, just like in the PTB where you couldn't see the amount of lock-on. These are very simple changes, honestly, and could easily be fixed when it goes live. If anything, now that the drones don't instantly go into scan mode when they're placed down, mass removing them could sort of be bad, since now you'll have to wait for the survivors to run into them to activate them again. So giving a cooldown to remove them is really dumb, since now you have a cooldown for removing them and a cooldown for placing them. Obviously, the cooldown on placing them is fine. Then, just let us see the lock-on status. There should never be a killer where the survivors have more info about their power than we do. Besides Pig, but instant kill traps, so it's different. Another big thing that sucks about Skull Merchant is her lack of special ability or mobility. She is still an M1 killer now, but doesn't have any sort of mobility or special attack. See, other killers like this have a tangible threat. Ghostface gets exposed, Demogorgon gets the shred, Xenomorph has tail stab, Spirit gets mobility, etc. Even the Clown can quickly apply his hindered and give himself a solid speed buff. The issue with Skull Merchant is, again, she sort of just has to wait for her power to activate to get it down. So let me put it like this, compare her slowdown to the Clown's. What does the Clown have to do? You throw your pink bottle and boom, they're hindered. What does the Skull Merchant have to do? She has to put down her drone, wait for it to turn on, wait for it to rotate and have a survivor run into it, wait for it to apply lock-on stacks, wait for them to get the claw trap, and then wait for them to finally get scanned again to become hindered. Do you see why her power is so bad now? Compare it to a killer like Artist, where she puts down her crow and pushes a button to shoot it, and if they're right in front of it, they become injured, or you go for cross-map snipes. Or Singularity, where you put down a camera and shoot a survivor, then you can teleport to them. That's not even the worst part too, because if you have maximum drones deployed, then you have to recall a drone, wait for the cooldown, wait to place it, wait for it to turn on, wait for survivors to run into it, wait for them to get scanned, wait for the claw trap, and then you get hindered. Meanwhile, it's all line of sight based, so 4 lanes or indoor maps completely ruin her power. Remember, Clown has to push one button and he can hinder survivors. Like I said before, survivors again just after a while just lose. She gets a speed boost and they get hindered and deep wound, so no way for them to either tank or dodge, and they're slow. And while this does seem so overpowered, it just takes so long for the scanning to actually start up and actually gain lock-on stacks that it's just not really worth it. The issue with Skull Merchant is, again, she just sort of has to wait every time she wants to use her power, and after a while, survivors will just automatically lose. And while this does seem so OP, the scanning takes so long to activate and she has no special mechanic to make loops worse, like before how if they had a claw trap on them, pallets would break if they vault. I do see why they removed this now because of how easy it is to apply claw traps to survivors. Then, in most loops, there's many line of sight blockers or walls that can just block the spinny stacks that the drones give. So either make it spin quicker or, again, go through walls, but not verticality, that part's fine. What would I change about her? First off, make her drone spin faster in stealth mode, as that part really sucks. Watching your power slowly turn and waiting for it to go at its own pace instead of instantly happening like Artist or Clown. Secondly, remove the cooldown on recalling drones, seeing as now how it's harder to actually activate your drones, making it so you have a cooldown on both placing your drones and recalling them just makes it take way longer than it needs to be. And it feels really clunky, honestly. Thirdly, let us see the lock-on progress because there's no reason not to. At least before you can make the argument because it was exposed and that's an instant down, but now that it's broken and deep wound and hindered, it just takes so long and you have no clue what they're at. And finally, remove the drones deactivating if you run by them. She does have a lot more potential and I find her way more enjoyable to play than before, but like her whole gameplay loop now is you put down a drone, wait for them to get scanned and hindered, then you just run at them and they lose. It's not really fun. It's not really like I'm playing smart and using my bottles with Clown. It's another night situation where if you catch them in a corner or a place where there's no good connecting tiles, they just lose. But if they're in the open or in a main building somewhere with walls, they can just run around and avoid your power. Your power is now not an issue of how you'll get the down, but just when, because it's more or less inevitable that they get down because of hindered and haste and then broken. It's just a combo that sounds OP, but it takes so long to activate and it's so easy to counter. She's basically just the same, if not worse. I am glad that they made it so that the drones don't work on generators anymore, but it's just not really rewarding to play as her. The setting up and planning doesn't feel as well as like Artist or Clown, because it's not a matter of how you'll get the hit, but when. Along with that, there's also the anti-camp mechanic, and I think it's pretty busted so far and just very confusing. The fact that the timer starts as soon as you hook someone means that like as soon as you hook, they already have 10 or 15% just for hooking even when you're not camping. If the timer started like 3 seconds after you got hooked, I'd like it more. And then there's the fact that you can't really tell how far you have to be to activate it or tell if survivors being nearby are affecting it. It's just really confusing right now. And this is all just probably me saying stuff and because I'm not used to it. And it'll probably be fine further down the line, but right now it feels like it needs a little bit of tweaking. Overall, I do like this system. It'll take some getting used to and some number tweaking, but I'm fine with it since camping is rarely ever needed besides endgame, and luckily enough, behavior is smart enough to think about that and it deactivates during the endgame, which I really like. However, it still is needed in those clutch, one gen scenarios where you need to secure kills, so we'll see how it plays out in the coming months. Overall, I like everything about this PTB except the Skull Merchant rework, because now she's just even more boring to play against and is essentially just the same in loop. It's still the core mechanic of, oh, she placed down a drone in the loop, I need to get out of here. But I guess they did make it so that now if you're injured, her power actually is a threat to you instead of before where since it's exposed, if you're injured, it doesn't really matter. So I guess, that's nice, but still, it's just very boring. I do have a new video soon. I know I said end of the week last time, but man, life really sucks. I'm so sorry. I promise it's almost done. It's my biggest project ever so far, so please subscribe and please stay tuned. I am Donut Boy signing off. Take care of yourselves and have a damn good one out there. Peace.